Admiral Zethkar's scales turned bright red again, but this time Jake could tell it was not from anger. It was from fear. The Admiral walked closer to where Jake sat in his restraints. "Explain how humans detected our presence," the Admiral demanded. Jake looked around the room at all the worried alien faces. "You want the simple version or the complicated version?" "Simple," the Admiral said quickly. "You've been here for 3 years watching us and taking pictures. Did you really think nobody would notice?" The tactical officer stepped forward. "Our reconnaissance operations were conducted with complete stealth. Human technology cannot detect our ships or monitoring equipment." "You're right," Jake said. "We can't detect your ships. But we can detect the effects of your ships." "What effects?" asked the crystal alien. Jake settled back in his chair like he was about to tell a story. "See, you guys are really advanced, but you don't understand humans very well. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years, so we've learned to notice when something changes." He paused to make sure all the aliens were listening. 3 years ago, certain types of radio signals started getting disrupted in patterns that didn't match anything we'd seen before. Satellite images started showing weird shadows that appeared and disappeared. Military radar operators started reporting contacts that vanished before they could be identified. Admiral Zethkar looked at his technical staff. "How is this possible? Our stealth systems are perfect. Perfect for hiding from alien technology," Jake said. "But humans don't just rely on technology. We use our brains." The aide spoke up nervously. "What do you mean?" "We started putting the pieces together," Jake explained. "Strange radio interference, unexplained radar contacts, satellites that stopped working for no reason, atmospheric disturbances that didn't match weather patterns. When you add it all up, it means someone is watching us who doesn't want to be seen." The purple alien made a sound that might have been cursing. "They deduced our presence from secondary effects." "It gets better," Jake said, his smile growing wider. "Once we figured out that someone was watching us, we started watching back. We began tracking the patterns, where the strange signals happened most often, what times they occurred, how they moved around the planet." Admiral Zethkar was looking sick now. His scales had turned a gray color that Jake had never seen before. "What did you discover?" "We figured out where your ships like to hide," Jake said simply. "Behind the moon, near Jupiter, in the asteroid belt. Turns out you guys have favorite spots." The briefing room erupted in worried chatter as the aliens talked to each other in their various languages. Admiral Zethkar held up one of his 4 hands for silence. "Even if humans detected our presence, they could not have prepared adequate defenses in such a short time," the Admiral said. Jake laughed out loud. "Admiral, what do you think we've been doing for the last 70 years? "Fighting wars with each other," said the tactical officer. "Right. And what do you think we learned from all that fighting?" The aliens looked confused, so Jake continued. "We learned that the next war might be different from the last war, so we prepared for every kind of war we could think of, including the kind where someone attacks us from space." Admiral Zethkar stared at Jake. "You prepared for alien invasion?" "We prepared for everything," Jake said. "Nuclear war, chemical warfare, biological weapons, cyber attacks, economic warfare, and yes, invasion from space. We've got plans for all of it," the crystal alien spoke up. "But human technology is still primitive compared to ours." "You keep saying that," Jake said. "But you know what? Primitive. Technology that works is better than advanced technology that doesn't." "Our technology works perfectly," insisted the Admiral. "Does it?" Jake asked. "Your advanced stealth systems didn't hide you from a bunch of primitive humans. You're superior. Intelligence networks didn't figure out that we knew you were here. Your perfect reconnaissance missed the fact that we've been preparing for this moment since we first detected you." Jake looked around the room at all the alien faces. They were all staring at him, now with expressions he had not seen before. It was a mixture of fear, respect, and uncertainty. "Want to know what else you missed?" Jake asked. "What?" The Admiral said quietly. "You've been so focused on studying our military that you never looked at our civilians. You think our soldiers are the dangerous ones, but you haven't met our civilians yet." "What do civilians have to do with warfare?" asked the purple alien. Jake's smile became almost cheerful. "On Earth, the line between civilians and soldiers gets pretty blurry when someone threatens our home. You know how many humans own personal weapons?" The tactical officer checked his database. "According to our intelligence, approximately 40% of human households possess firearms." "That's just the legal ones we know about," Jake said. "But it's not just guns. Humans are really creative when it comes to making weapons out of ordinary things. Farm equipment, kitchen knives, tools, chemicals, vehicles. Pretty much anything can become a weapon if you know how to use it." The aliens were taking notes again, but their expressions were getting more worried by the minute. "There's something else you should know," Jake continued. "Human civilians have been watching your ships too. We've got people called amateur astronomers who spend their free time looking at space through telescopes. They've been tracking your movements and posting the information on something called the Internet." "What is the Internet?" asked the aide. "It's how humans share information instantly across the entire planet," Jake explained. "When one person sees something interesting, millions of other people know about it within hours." Admiral Zethkar looked like he was having trouble breathing. "Are you saying that millions of humans know about our presence?" "Not millions," Jake said. "Billions. It's been all over the news for months. Mysterious objects spotted near Earth. Government agencies investigating unusual signals. Are we alone in the universe? That kind of thing." The briefing room fell completely silent. Jake could hear the alien equivalent of heavy breathing, coming from several directions. "So you see," Jake said, "your invasion plan has a small problem. You're not invading a planet of primitive humans who don't know you're coming. You're invading a planet of humans who have been preparing for this fight for months." Admiral Zethkar walked over to his command station and activated a communication device. "All ships, this is Admiral Zethkar. Cancel invasion preparations. Repeat, cancel all invasion preparations." The other aliens around the table began talking excitedly in their own languages. Jake could tell they were arguing about what to do next. The Admiral walked back to where Jake sat. "What would humans require to agree to peaceful negotiations?" Jake thought about that for a moment. "Well, you could start by letting me and Captain Grant go home. Show some good faith." "Captain Grant?" asked the Admiral. "The other human you captured. Lisa Grant. She's probably in your detention facility wondering why I haven't tried to escape yet." The Admiral looked confused. "Why have you not attempted to escape?" Jake's smile returned to its full brightness. "Because I'm exactly where I need to be, talking to you, explaining why invading Earth would be the worst mistake you could possibly make." Admiral Zethkar studied Jake's face for a long moment. "You allowed yourself to be captured." "My ship didn't have engine trouble," Jake admitted. "We saw your scouts and decided someone should come up here and have a conversation with you before you did something really stupid." The Admiral's scales shifted through several colors before settling on a pale blue. "You came here as a diplomatic mission." "I came here to tell you the truth about humans," Jake said. "Mission accomplished." Admiral Zethkar looked around the briefing room at his officers. They all looked back at him with uncertain expressions. Finally, the Admiral turned back to Jake. "If we release you and Captain Grant, will humans agree to peaceful negotiations?" Jake nodded. "I think we can work something out. But Admiral, Yes? Next time you want to talk to humans, try sending a message first. We're usually willing to negotiate before the shooting starts. Admiral HFY ordered his guards to remove Jake's restraints. As the metal cuffs fell away, Jake rubbed his wrists and stood up slowly. One more thing, Jake said as he walked toward the door. When you write your report about this, make sure you mention that I'm just a regular guy. Nothing special about me at all. He paused at the doorway and looked back at the room full of worried aliens. Wait until you meet someone who's actually dangerous. The door closed behind Jake Miller, leaving Admiral HFY alone with his officers, and the uncomfortable knowledge that the Galactic Coalition had just avoided starting a war they could not possibly win. In his command log that night, the Admiral wrote, "Threat assessment for species designation, human, updated from negligible to extinction level event. Recommended contact. Protocol changed from invasion to alliance at all costs. The invasion fleet turned away from Earth and headed home." Behind them, on the small blue planet, several billion humans went back to their daily lives, most of them never knowing how close they had come to their first interstellar war, but in military bases and government buildings around the world. People like Jake Miller continued to prepare, because humans had learned long ago that the best way to avoid a fight was to be ready for one. Admiral HFY stood in the middle of the briefing room for several long moments. His scales had turned a pale white color that Jake had never seen before. The other aliens waited quietly for their commander to speak. "Show me," the Admiral finally said to his tactical officer. "Show me everything we know about human military capabilities." "Admiral, are you certain?" "Our intelligence reports indicate that viewing human warfare footage can be disturbing." "Show me everything," the Admiral repeated. His voice was firm but quiet. The lights in the briefing room dimmed, and a large holographic display appeared above the center table. Images began to appear in the air, three-dimensional recordings that the aliens had captured during their years of watching Earth. The first image showed a group of human soldiers moving through a destroyed city. The buildings around them were broken and burning, but the soldiers kept advancing. When enemies shot at them from windows, the humans shot back and kept moving forward. "This is from a conflict in Iraq," the tactical officer explained. "Notice how the humans continue their mission despite being under constant attack." Jake watched the alien faces as they stared at the hologram. He could see their expressions changing as they realized what they were looking at. These were not primitive warriors with simple weapons. These were highly trained soldiers who knew exactly what they were doing. The image changed to show human aircraft dropping bombs on enemy positions. But then the display showed something that made several aliens gasp. When the aircraft were damaged by enemy fire, some of the human pilots deliberately flew their damaged planes into important enemy targets. "They destroyed their own aircraft intentionally," said the crystal alien. "Why would they do such a thing?" "Because the mission was more important than their own lives," Jake explained. "Sometimes the only way to complete the objective is to sacrifice yourself to do it." "That is irrational behavior," said the purple alien. "Self-preservation is the most basic instinct of any intelligent species." "Not for humans," Jake said. "We've got something more important than self-preservation. We've got duty." The display changed again, this time showing human soldiers in a mountain region. They were carrying heavy equipment up steep slopes while enemy forces shot at them from above. Several humans were wounded, but their fellow soldiers carried them and kept climbing. "Note the terrain," said the tactical officer. "This environment would be considered impassable by most military forces. The humans are fighting in conditions that our own troops would find extremely difficult." Admiral HFY was studying the images carefully. "What is the temperature in this region?" The tactical officer checked his data. approximately minus 20 degrees Celsius. The altitude makes breathing difficult, and the terrain is unstable. And the humans are fighting there anyway, the Admiral said. It was not a question. We fight everywhere, Jake said. Hot, cold, wet, dry, underground, underwater, on mountains, in swamps. If there's a place on Earth where humans live, there's probably been a war there. The holographic display showed new images now. Human soldiers in thick white clothing moving through deep snow. Other humans in lightweight gear walking through dense jungle. More humans in special suits fighting in areas contaminated by chemical weapons. This is impossible, said the rock-like alien. No single species can adapt to such varied environments. We don't adapt, Jake said. We learn, we train, we prepare. And when we have to fight somewhere new, we figure out how to do it. The images kept changing. The aliens watched human engineers building bridges under enemy fire. They saw human medics treating wounded soldiers while battles raged around them. They watched human supply teams delivering food and ammunition to troops who had been surrounded by enemies for weeks. They never retreat, observed the crystal alien. Sometimes we do, Jake said, but only to find a better place to fight from. Retreating doesn't mean giving up. It just means finding a new way to win. Admiral Zethkar asked his tactical officer to show specific footage. Display the incident from the database marked Human Defensive Action 247. A new image appeared. It showed a small group of human soldiers in a building that was almost completely destroyed. Enemies were attacking from all sides with superior numbers and weapons. The humans had very little ammunition left, and several were wounded. The aliens watched as the humans fought for hours against impossible odds. When they ran out of bullets, they used knives. When the knives broke, they used rocks and pieces of metal from the destroyed building. When some of them could no longer fight, others carried them to safety and kept fighting. How long did this engagement last? Asked the Admiral. 14 hours, replied the tactical officer. The humans held their position until reinforcements arrived. How many humans were involved in this action? 12. And how many enemies were attacking them? The tactical officer paused. Approximately 200. The briefing room was completely silent. Jake could see the aliens staring at the holographic display with what he now recognized as fear. Show them the training footage, Jake said quietly. Admiral. Zethkar looked at him. What training footage? The stuff you recorded at our military schools. Show them how we train our soldiers. The tactical officer looked uncertain, but the Admiral nodded. New images appeared showing human military training facilities. The aliens watched young humans learning to fight in hand-to-hand combat. They saw humans practicing with weapons until they could reload in complete darkness. They watched humans learning to survive in harsh environments with minimal equipment. This is basic training, Jake explained. Every soldier goes through this before. They're allowed to fight. It takes about 6 months to complete. 6 months of continuous combat training? Asked the purple alien. Just the basic course, Jake said. Advanced training takes longer. Special operations training can take 2 years or more. The display showed humans jumping out of aircraft, swimming through freezing water, and crawling through muddy obstacles while instructors shouted at them. It showed humans learning to fight as teams, with each member knowing exactly what the others would do in any situation. But most disturbing, said the tactical officer, is what we discovered about human military doctrine. Explain, ordered the Admiral. Humans do not believe in acceptable losses in the same way other species do. When we calculate military operations, we determine how many casualties are acceptable to achieve an objective. Humans calculate differently. How do they calculate? Asked the crystal alien. Jake answered before the tactical officer could speak. We figure out what needs to be done then we do it. Whatever it costs. That is strategically unsound, said the Admiral. Unlimited commitment of resources leads to military defeat. Does it? Jake asked. You've been watching us for years. How many wars have humans lost because we were willing to pay too high a price? The Admiral did not answer. Jake could see him thinking about all the footage they had just watched. There is something else, said the tactical officer. He sounded nervous now. We have detected unusual activity on Earth during the past several months. What kind of activity? Asked the Admiral. Military communications have increased significantly. Human governments are moving troops and equipment to new positions. Defense spending has increased across all major nations. Jake felt his smile returning. You guys aren't as sneaky as you think you are. Admiral Zethkar turned to stare at Jake. What does that mean? It means we know you're here, Jake said simply. It means we've known for months. And it means we've been getting ready. The aliens around the table began talking to each other in their own languages. Jake could not understand the words, but he could hear the fear in their voices. That is impossible, said the Admiral. Our stealth technology is far superior to human detection capabilities. Jake laughed. Your stealth technology is pretty. Good, but you made one mistake. What mistake? You assumed we're stupid. The aliens around the table looked confused. They had heard many new terms in the last few minutes, but they did not understand what most of them meant. Admiral Zethkar put down the tablet and stared at Jake Miller. Explain asymmetric warfare. The Admiral demanded. Jake leaned back in his chair as much as the restraints would allow. It means fighting when you're the underdog. When the enemy has better weapons, more soldiers, and more money than you do. It means finding ways to win anyway. That is impossible, said the tall blue tactical officer. Superior numbers and technology always determine the outcome of warfare. Jake laughed, but it was not the happy laugh from before. This laugh sounded dangerous. You really believe that, don't you? You think having the best toys means you automatically win. Of course it does, said the crystal alien. This is basic. Military science. Tell that to the British Empire, Jake said. They had the best navy in the world, the best trained soldiers, and the most advanced weapons. A bunch of American farmers with hunting rifles kicked them out anyway. The aliens looked at each other with confusion. The aide started typing on his device, probably looking up information about the American Revolution. That was 300 years ago, said the Admiral. Surely humans have learned better tactical thinking since then. Jake's smile got wider. Oh, we learned a lot. We learned that technology doesn't matter as much as you think it does. We learned that big armies can be beaten by small ones if the small ones are smarter and tougher. He shifted in his chair to look at all the aliens around the table. Want some examples? Vietnam. A bunch of farmers with old weapons beat the most powerful military on Earth. Afghanistan. Goat herders with homemade bombs held off 3 different superpowers for 40 years. Iraq. Insurgents with improvised explosives tied down 500,000 coalition troops for a decade. The tactical officer was typing frantically on his device now. These conflicts you mention, the technologically superior forces did not achieve victory. Not really, Jake said. Turns out that when you're fighting for your home, you don't give up just because the enemy has better equipment. You find other ways to win. Admiral Zethkar picked up the tablet again. Your file mentions close quarters combat training. What does that involve? Fighting when you're close enough to touch the enemy, Jake explained. When your fancy energy weapons are useless because you might hit your own people. When it comes down to who's stronger, faster, and meaner. Surely advanced technology eliminates the need for such primitive combat, said the purple alien. Jake shook his head. Technology breaks down. Weapons jam. Equipment fails. When that happens, you better know how to fight with your hands, or you're dead. The Admiral was reading the file again. It says here you are trained in 17 different forms of hand-to-hand combat. That's just the ones they taught me in the military, Jake said. I learned a few more on my own time. Why would you need so many different fighting styles? Asked the rock-like alien. Because different situations need different approaches, Jake explained. Fighting in a hallway is different from fighting in an open field. Fighting one guy is different from fighting 3 guys. Fighting someone your own size is different from fighting someone bigger. The aliens were taking notes again, but Jake could see they were worried now. Their confident expressions had changed to looks of concern. Tell me about survival training, said the Admiral. Jake thought for a moment about where to start. We learned to stay alive in places that try to kill. U.S. Deserts where there's no water for hundreds of miles. Jungles full of poisonous plants and dangerous animals. Mountains where the temperature drops so low it can freeze your blood. Arctic regions where the wind can cut through metal. And humans can survive in all these environments? Asked the crystal alien. With the right training and equipment, yes. Without equipment, it's harder, but still possible. I once spent 6 days in the desert with no food and only 2 bottles of water. How did you survive? Asked the aide. You find ways, Jake said simply. You dig for water during the day and travel at night. You eat insects and roots. You make shelter from rocks and sand. You keep moving until you find civilization or civilization finds you. The tactical officer looked up from his device. Admiral, I have been researching human military history. The records are ... disturbing. How so? Asked the Admiral. Humans have been fighting continuous wars for their entire recorded history. Over 5,000 years of constant warfare. They have developed techniques and strategies that our databases classify as extremely aggressive and tactically innovative. Jake nodded. We've had a lot of practice. The database indicates that humans regularly fight in conditions that would be considered uninhabitable by most species. The tactical officer continued. Extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, underwater, underground, and in zero-gravity environments. We go where the enemy goes, Jake said. If they hide in a cave, we follow them into the cave. If they go underwater, we learn to fight underwater. If they go to space, we take the fight to space. Admiral Zethkar was looking more and more uncomfortable. Your species seems to treat warfare as a natural part of existence. Because it is, Jake said. Look, you guys seem nice enough, but you don't understand what you're dealing with. You think humans are primitive because we haven't figured out interstellar travel yet. But we've been too busy fighting each other to worry about leaving the planet. Fighting each other over what? Asked the purple alien. Everything, Jake said. Land, water, food, oil, religion, politics, pride, revenge. You name it, we've fought a war over it. And every war teaches us something new about how to fight the next one. The Admiral set down the tablet and walked closer to Jake. Are you saying that human warfare is more advanced than we realized? Jake looked up at the 8-foot-tall alien with scales and 4 arms. Admiral, what's the longest war your people ever fought? The Admiral thought for a moment. The hegemony was engaged in a territorial dispute with the Zephyrian Empire for approximately 2 years. It was considered a lengthy conflict. 2 years, Jake repeated. We had a war that lasted 100 years. Actually, we had several wars that lasted that long, and a couple that went on for longer. The aliens around the table made sounds of disbelief. That's impossible, said the crystal alien. No civilization could sustain warfare for that duration. We can, Jake said, because we don't just fight with armies. We fight with everything we have. When the soldiers die, the farmers pick up weapons. When the farmers die, the shopkeepers Start fighting. When they die, the children learn to fight. The room was very quiet now. Jake could see that his words were having an effect on the aliens. They were starting to understand that they might have made a mistake. But surely, said the Admiral, modern human warfare is more civilized than these historical examples. Jake's expression became very serious. Admiral, I've been to Afghanistan. I've seen 13-year-old kids who know how to make bombs out of fertilizer and cell phone parts. I've watched grandmothers hide weapons for their sons and grandsons. I've seen entire cities turn into battlefields where every building could have an enemy sniper. He paused to let that sink in before continuing. And that's just how we fight. Each other. You want to know what happens when we all fight together against a common enemy? The Admiral's scales had turned almost completely white now. What happens? Jake's smile returned, but it was not a pleasant smile. We stop fighting each other and start fighting you. All of us? Together. The briefing room fell completely silent, except for the humming of the ship's engines. Jake could see the aliens looking at each other with expressions he had not seen before. For the first time since his capture, they looked afraid. Admiral, said the tactical officer quietly, perhaps we should reconsider our invasion timeline. Admiral. Zethkar did not answer. He was staring at Jake Miller and thinking about what he had just learned. A small gray aide returned to the briefing room, carrying a data tablet. His large black eyes looked nervous as he handed the device to Admiral Zethkar. The Admiral took the tablet and looked at the screen with his yellow eyes. Let us see what makes this human so confident, the Admiral said. His voice was loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Perhaps reading his pathetic record will teach him some humility. Jake Miller sat quietly in his chair. His smile had not gone away, but now he looked calm instead of amused. He watched the Admiral start to read from the tablet. Jake Miller. The Admiral began. Born in Kansas, North America, 32 years ago. Parents were farmers who grew food crops. The Admiral looked up at Jake with a mocking expression. A farmer's son. How terrifying. The other aliens made sounds that Jake guessed were laughter. He did not react. He just waited. Admiral Zethkar continued reading. Joined human military at age 18. Branch of service, United States Marine Corps. The Admiral paused and looked at his tactical officer, a tall blue alien with 6 arms. What do we know about this Marine Corps? The tactical officer checked his own device. It appears to be one of several human military organizations. They specialize in amphibious assault operations. Nothing our forces cannot handle easily. Of course, said the Admiral. He went back to reading Jake's file. Initial training location, Paris Island. Completed basic training with high marks. Specialty, infantry rifleman. Jake noticed that several aliens around the table were taking notes on their own devices. They were treating this like a lesson about human military structure. He found that funny, but he did not laugh this time. First deployment, the Admiral continued. Afghanistan, Earth. Duration, 15 months. The Admiral looked confused. What is Afghanistan? Another aide checked the database. It appears to be a region on Earth where humans were fighting other humans. A conflict lasted approximately 20 years. 20 years? Asked an alien that looked like it was made of living rock. Humans fought each other for 20 years over one small region? Apparently so, said the Admiral. He seemed less amused now. Jake Miller served in this conflict for 15 months. Records indicate he participated in, 47 combat patrols, 12 direct fire engagements, and 3 major offensive operations. The room became quieter. Some of the aliens stopped taking notes and started paying closer attention to what the Admiral was reading. Second deployment, the Admiral said, his voice getting more serious. Syria. Earth. Duration, 12 months. Combat operations, 63. Patrols, 18 direct engagements, 7 urban warfare scenarios. Jake watched as the aliens around the table began to look uncomfortable. The tall blue tactical officer was checking his own data tablet, probably looking up what urban warfare meant. Third deployment. Admiral Zethkar continued. Afghanistan again. Duration, 13 months. During this deployment, Jake Miller was. The Admiral paused and read the next part more slowly. During this deployment, Jake Miller was awarded the Bronze Star Medal for valor in combat. What does that mean? Asked the crystal-like alien. The aide checked the database again. It appears to be a decoration given to humans who perform acts of heroism during battle. Admiral Zethkar kept reading, but his voice was getting quieter. The citation reads, "For heroic achievement in ground combat against an armed enemy." When his unit came under heavy fire from superior numbers, Jake Miller exposed himself to enemy fire to help wounded soldiers reach safety. His actions saved the lives of 4 fellow Marines. Jake noticed that none of the aliens were making mocking sounds anymore. They were all listening carefully to every word. Additional assignments, the Admiral read. Counter-terrorism operations in Iraq, Pakistan, and Somalia. Specialized training in survival, escape, and evasion. Qualified expert marksman with 7. Different weapon systems. The purple alien with no eyes spoke up. How many combat deployments did this human complete? Admiral Zethkar scrolled through the file. 5 combat deployments over 8 years. Total time in active war zones, 54 months. More than 4 years of actual fighting, said the tactical officer. That seems like a very long time for a single individual. There is more, said the Admiral. His scales were no longer red, with anger. Now they were a dark blue color that Jake had not seen before. Medical records show Jake Miller was wounded in combat 4 times. Gunshot wound to the left shoulder. Shrapnel wounds to the chest and arms from an explosive device. Concussion from a rocket attack. Broken ribs from a vehicle accident during combat operations. Jake finally spoke up. You forgot the time I got blown up in Helmand Province. That was fun. All the aliens turned to look at him. The Admiral checked the file again. Improvised explosive device detonation. Jake Miller was evacuated by helicopter after being buried under debris for 6 hours. Suffered broken leg, internal bleeding, and severe concussion. Returned to duty after 3 months of medical treatment. The room was very quiet now. Jake could hear the breathing of some of the aliens. Others did not seem to breathe at all. How is this possible? Asked the rock-like alien. How does a human survive being buried under debris for 6 hours? We dig, Jake said simply. We don't like being buried. Admiral Zethkar continued reading the file, but now he was reading silently to himself. Jake could see the Admiral's expression change as he read more details. The yellow eyes got wider, and the scales kept shifting colors. After several minutes, the tactical officer asked, Admiral, what else does the file contain? Admiral Zethkar looked up from the tablet. His voice was much quieter now. Survival. Training in desert, Arctic, jungle, and mountain environments. Parachute qualified. Underwater demolition training. Languages spoken. English, Arabic, Pashto, and basic Mandarin Chinese. Why would a simple soldier need to speak so many languages? Asked the crystal alien. Jake answered before the Admiral could. Because we fight in a lot of different places. Against a lot of different people. You have to understand them if you want to beat them. The Admiral kept reading. Post-military career. Constructor at Survival Training School. Subjects taught. Wilderness survival. Urban survival. Improvised. Weapons, escape, and evasion tactics. He teaches other humans how to fight, said the purple alien. It was not a question. He teaches other humans how to survive. Jake corrected. Fighting is just part of surviving. Admiral Zethkar set down the tablet and looked directly at Jake. This file indicates you have spent most of your adult life in combat situations. That's right, Jake said. Against other humans. That's right. And you survived situations that killed many others. Some others, Jake said. Not many. Most of the guys I served with are still alive. We're pretty good at staying alive. The Admiral picked up the tablet again and read some more. His scales were now a pale yellow color. The file indicates that Jake Miller is rated as combat effective and psychologically stable despite extended exposure to warfare. What does that mean? Asked the aide. Jake answered. It means I can still do my job after seeing and doing things that would break most people. It means I can function normally even after years of fighting. The tactical officer was checking his own data again. Admiral, I am seeing references to something called post-traumatic stress. Many human soldiers develop this condition after combat, but not this one, said the Admiral, looking at Jake. Oh, I have some of that too, Jake said casually. Most of us do. We just deal with it and keep going. It's not that big a deal. Admiral Zethkar stared at Jake for a long moment. You consider psychological trauma from warfare to be not a big deal? Jake shrugged. It's part of the job. You see bad things, you do bad things, you lose friends. Then you go home and try to be normal until the next time you have to fight. The Admiral looked around the room at his officers. Jake could see that they were all thinking the same thing. This was not what they had expected from their primitive enemy. There is one more thing in this file, the Admiral said slowly. Jake Miller's military occupational specialty rating. What does that mean? Asked several aliens at once. The Admiral read from the tablet. It means his job description. According to this file, Jake Miller is rated as... The Admiral paused and read it again to make sure he had it right. He is rated as an expert in small unit tactics, close quarters combat, and what humans call asymmetric warfare. Jake's smile came back. Now you're getting to the good stuff. The briefing room on the alien ship was huge. The walls were made of some kind of metal that glowed with a soft blue light. 12 different types of alien beings sat around a massive table that looked like it was carved from a single piece of black stone. Each alien looked very different from the others. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like they were made of crystal. Admiral Zethkar stood at the front of the room. He was 8 feet tall with dark green scales that changed colors when he moved. 4 powerful arms crossed over his broad chest. His yellow eyes scanned the room as he spoke in a deep voice that rumbled like thunder. Today we begin the final phase, the Admiral said. Planet Earth will join our empire within 1 solar cycle. The humans have no idea we are coming. They are still fighting each other with primitive weapons while we prepare our advanced fleet. The other aliens nodded and made sounds of agreement. A creature that looked like a giant insect clicked its mandibles. Admiral, our scouts report that humans still use chemical explosives and metal projectiles. They have not even learned to travel between stars. This will be the easiest conquest in our history. Jake Miller sat in the back corner of the room. He was the only human on the entire ship. The aliens had captured him 3 months ago when his small space patrol craft had engine trouble near Jupiter. They kept him alive to study human behavior and learn about Earth's defenses. Jake was 32 years old, with short brown hair and tired blue eyes. He wore the torn remains of his blue military uniform. His hands were cuffed with alien metal, but he could still move them enough to scratch his beard. The aliens thought he was broken and defeated. They were wrong. The human cities are large but poorly defended. continued Admiral Zethkar. Most of their military forces are spread thin across their single planet. They waste energy fighting meaningless wars against each other instead of preparing for real threats like us. Jake felt a smile creep across his face. The Admiral was reading from a datapad, listing all the ways humans were weak and unprepared. The alien spoke about Earth's primitive aircraft and basic ground vehicles. He talked about how humans still needed to eat food and drink water every day, calling it a critical weakness. Their weapons require physical ammunition, said a tall alien with purple skin and no eyes. When they run out of bullets, they become helpless. Our energy weapons never run out of power. Jake's smile grew wider. He tried to hold back a small laugh, but it escaped anyway. The sound was quiet, but in the serious briefing room, it seemed very loud. Admiral Zethkar stopped talking. His scales shifted from green to bright orange, which Jake had learned meant anger. All the other aliens turned to look at the human in the corner. You find something amusing, human? The Admiral asked. His voice was cold and dangerous. Jake tried to stop smiling, but he could not help himself. The more he thought about what the aliens were saying, the funnier it became. A small chuckle turned into a bigger laugh. I asked you a question, Admiral, Zethkar said, taking a step toward Jake. What do you find so entertaining about your species' destruction? Jake wiped tears from his eyes. He was laughing so hard now that his stomach hurt. The aliens around the table looked confused and angry. Some of them made threatening gestures with their weapons. You really think you know humans, Jake said between laughs. You think you understand what you're getting into. We have studied your species for many cycles, said the Admiral. We know everything about human capabilities and limitations. You are weak, divided, and unprepared for advanced warfare. Jake laughed even harder. That's what makes this so funny. You think you've done your homework, but you haven't learned anything important. Admiral Zethkar's scales turned bright red. No. Jake had never seen that color before, but he guessed it meant the alien was very angry. The Admiral walked over to where Jake sat and looked down at him with those yellow eyes. Explain yourself, human. What could you possibly know that our intelligence networks do not? Jake looked up at the towering alien and shook his head. You want to invade Earth based on what you think you know about us. But you're looking at all the wrong things. Our data is complete and accurate, insisted the Admiral. Your data tells you about our technology and our wars, Jake said. But it doesn't tell you about us, about what we really are. The other aliens were listening now. Jake could feel their attention focused on him like a weight. He stopped laughing and looked directly at Admiral Zethkar. You know what the biggest mistake you made was? Jake asked. Enlighten me, the Admiral said with sarcasm. You captured a random guy like me and thought you learned something about humans. But you never bothered to find out who I actually am. Admiral Zethkar looked confused. You are Jake Miller, age 32, from the North American continent. You pilot small spacecraft for your military. That's just basic information, Jake said. You never looked deeper, did you? You never checked my actual record. The Admiral's expression changed. His scales shifted from red to a darker color that Jake had not seen before. What record? Jake's smile returned, but this time it was not from laughter. This time it looked dangerous. You really should have done a background check, Admiral. You really should have read my file. Admiral Zethkar turned away from Jake and barked orders to his aide, a small gray alien with large black eyes. Bring me the complete military record of this human. I want every detail of his service history. As the aide hurried out of the room, Jake settled back in his chair. The other aliens were staring at him now with new interest. Some of them looked worried. You know what the really funny part is? Jake said to the room. I'm just a regular guy. Nothing special about me at all. Wait until you see what regular guys like me do for a living." Admiral Zethkar stood very still, waiting for his aide to return with Jake's file. For the first time since the briefing began, the room was completely quiet. The only sound was the soft hum of the ship's engines and Jake Miller's quiet chuckling.